Imagine a world where your thoughts are not your own, a world where unseen forces can manipulate your mind, bending your will to their command without you even realizing it. It sounds like something out of a science fiction novel, doesn't it? But what if I told you that during the height of the Cold War, deep within the secretive corridors of the KGB, experiments were conducted that aimed to make this dystopian vision a reality? These weren't just wild theories. The Soviet Union invested vast resources into developing psychotronic weapons, devices intended to control the human mind using electromagnetic waves. Today, we're diving into the shadowy world of these secret KGB experiments that took place in hidden laboratories in Moscow and Leningrad, where the boundaries of science, ethics, and power were dangerously blurred. The Cold War era was marked by an intense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union, each side pushing the limits of technology and innovation to gain the upper hand. Amidst the race for nuclear supremacy in space exploration, there was another, less visible competition taking place. Both superpowers were deeply interested in understanding and harnessing the potential of the human mind. For the Soviets, this interest led to a series of clandestine experiments aimed at developing psychotronic weapons. These were not weapons in the traditional sense, like guns or bombs, but rather tools designed to influence or control human behavior using advanced scientific methods. The idea was simple yet terrifying. If you could control a person's mind, you could control their actions. Imagine the strategic advantage of being able to manipulate political leaders, military commanders, or even entire populations into acting in ways that serve your interests. The potential applications of such technology were limitless, and so too were the ethical implications. Yet, driven by the relentless pursuit of power and dominance, the KGB set out to unlock the secrets of the human mind, using methods that were as secretive as they were controversial. The laboratories in Moscow and Leningrad became the epicenters of these experiments. Scientists and researchers, some willingly and others under duress, were tasked with exploring the effects of electromagnetic waves on the brain. The goal was to discover how these waves could alter thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. The experiments were shrouded in secrecy, with little documentation surviving the collapse of the Soviet Union. However, what has emerged paints a chilling picture of a regime willing to explore the darkest corners of science to achieve its aims. Participants in these experiments were often unaware of the true nature of the tests they were subjected to. Some were told they were part of routine medical examinations, while others were led to believe they were contributing to groundbreaking scientific research. In reality, they were guinea pigs in a high-stakes game of psychological warfare. The KGB's interest in mind control was not merely academic, it was a strategic imperative. The ability to manipulate the thoughts and actions of individuals could provide an unparalleled advantage in both domestic and international affairs. As researchers in Moscow and Leningrad delved deeper into the mysteries of the mind, they developed a range of techniques designed to influence psychological states. These included the use of electromagnetic fields, ultrasonic waves, and even certain chemical compounds. The experiments were conducted under the strictest secrecy, often in isolated facilities designed to prevent any leaks. The results were closely guarded, with only a select few within the KGB's upper echelons aware of the full scope of the research. Despite the secrecy, rumors of the experiments began to circulate, both within the Soviet Union and among Western intelligence agencies. Stories of individuals experiencing unexplained psychological changes after exposure to certain technologies fueled speculation about the potential power of psychotronic weapons. The very idea that a government could control minds using invisible forces was enough to spark fear and paranoia, both at home and abroad. Yet despite the intrigue and the fear, concrete evidence of the KGB's success in developing effective mind control techniques remains elusive. Some former Soviet scientists have claimed that the experiments yielded significant results. while others dismiss the entire endeavor as pseudoscience. What is clear, however, is that the pursuit of psychotronic weapons was a serious and well-funded initiative, one that highlights the lengths to which the Soviet Union was willing to go in its quest for power and influence. In the end, the story of the KGB's experiments with psychotronic weapons is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the ethical boundaries of scientific exploration. It serves as a reminder that, even in a world obsessed with technological progress, there are lines that should not be crossed. As we continue to explore the potential of the human mind, it is essential to remember the lessons of the past, ensuring that our pursuit of knowledge does not come at the cost of our humanity. As the Cold War intensified, the Soviet Union's thirst for supremacy drove its scientists and intelligence agencies into uncharted territories. Deep within the clandestine halls of Moscow and Leningrad, these secret experiments pushed the boundaries of science and ethics. Researchers operating under the watchful eyes of KGB operatives delved into the mysterious realm of psychotronic weapons, devices purportedly capable of manipulating human thought using electromagnetic waves. In the dimly lit labs, scientists worked tirelessly, driven by a mix of curiosity, duty, and fear. Yuri Ivanov, one of the lead researchers, often spent long nights poring over complex theories, trying to translate them into reality. His colleague, Dr. Elena Petrovna, was skeptical, yet intrigued. "Quote, 0?" she asked one evening, her voice barely audible over the hum of the machinery. Yuri paused, glancing at her with weary eyes. The experiments progressed, each phase more daring than the last. Subjects were exposed to varying frequencies, sometimes causing inexplicable sensations or heightened states of awareness. There were whispers among the staff of successes of subjects influenced to act against their will, thoughts seemingly rewritten by unseen forces. Yet these claims were shrouded in secrecy, with only a select few privy to the full extent of the results. As months turned into years, the ethical dilemmas grew harder to ignore. Elena found herself questioning the morality of their work more frequently. One day, as she watched a young soldier, barely more than a boy, strapped to a chair for testing, she felt a chill run down her spine. Quote, 2. Yuri sighed, the weight of his conscience heavy upon him. Quote, 3. Rochiao. The KGB's grip was unyielding. Dissent was not tolerated, and those who questioned too loudly often disappeared without a trace. Yet, Elena could not shake the feeling that their work, while groundbreaking, was leading them down a dangerous path. She began to document her concerns secretly, hoping that one day the truth might come to light. Meanwhile, the Soviet hierarchy eagerly awaited results, their ambitions undeterred by the potential consequences. Reports filtered up the chain of command, painting a picture of progress and potential. Yet, the true cost of these experiments remained hidden, buried beneath layers of secrecy and the clamor for success. Elena's unease grew with each passing day as she witnessed the effects of their work firsthand. Subjects, often unaware of their participation, exhibited signs of personality changes, sudden mood swings, and inexplicable actions. These were not just marginal shifts, but profound alterations in behavior that raised ethical questions about the nature of free will and human rights. Elena was not alone in her concerns. Among her colleagues was Dmitri, a young physicist whose initial enthusiasm for the project had waned as the moral implications became apparent. Dmitri and Elena would often find themselves in whispered conversations in secluded corners of the laboratory, sharing their fears about the direction of their work. They spoke of the subjects who seemed to lose themselves, becoming mere puppets in the hands of unseen manipulators. Despite the growing unease, the experiments continued to expand. The focus was not only on perfecting mind control, but also on enhancing human abilities. There were rumors of trials aimed at boosting cognitive functions, increasing physical stamina, and even altering emotional responses to create the perfect soldier. Such ambitions, however, required even more invasive techniques, and the line between scientific exploration and ethical transgression became increasingly blurred. As the stakes grew higher, so did the risks. One winter evening, Elena and Dmitri were called to an emergency meeting. A subject had suffered a severe psychological breakdown, resulting in a violent outburst that had injured several staff members. The incident was quickly covered up, with the official explanation being a minor equipment malfunction. However, for Elena and Dmitri, it was a stark reminder of the potential dangers they were unleashing. The pressure from the top was relentless. High-ranking officials demanded results, often visiting the labs to witness the Fourier der Jagere quote for Geräusch being made. During one such visit, General Mikhailov, a stern figure with piercing eyes, addressed the team. He spoke of the strategic importance of their work, the necessity of gaining an edge over the Western powers, and the glory that awaited those who succeeded. His words were meant to inspire, but for Elena they only deepened her resolve to document the truth. Yet as she continued her clandestine efforts, Elena realized the walls were closing in. The project was under increased surveillance, and trust among team members began to erode. Small incidents, a misplaced document, a suspicious glance, fueled a growing paranoia. Elena knew that discovery of her notes would be dangerous, not just for her, but for anyone associated with her. In the midst of this tension, a breakthrough was announced. The team had successfully demonstrated a rudimentary form of telepathic communication between two subjects. The news was met with celebration within the lab, but with quiet dread by Elena and Dmitri. They understood that such success would only embolden the project leaders, pushing them to explore even more invasive and perilous avenues. As the experiments grew more audacious, the human cost became harder to ignore. Subjects began to exhibit long-term psychological effects, with some losing touch with reality altogether. While official reports touted these as acceptable collateral damage, Elena and Dmitri could no longer reconcile the suffering they witnessed with the supposed greater good. Amidst this backdrop, a clandestine resistance began to form. A small group of scientists, disillusioned by the trajectory of their work, started to meet secretly, sharing information and exploring ways to halt the project's momentum. Elena found herself at the heart of this group, her quiet determination driving her to seek allies beyond the walls of the laboratory. Through a series of coded messages and covert meetings, they reached out to contacts in the West, hoping to expose the program. It was a dangerous game, one that put them all at great risk. But for Elena, it was a risk worth taking. She dreamed of a world where science served humanity, not the ambitions of a few powerful men. As winter turned to spring, the tension in the laboratory reached a boiling point. The experiments had grown increasingly perilous, with reports of a new, even more secretive phase being initiated. Elena knew that time was running out. The window to act was closing, and the stakes had never been higher. Driven by a sense of urgency, Elena and Dmitri intensified their efforts, seeking to gather enough evidence to bring the truth to light. Yet with each passing day, the shadows lengthened and the danger grew more palpable. They had reached a crossroads, one that would determine not only their fates, but the future of countless others. In this world of shadows and whispers, where the mind itself became a battleground, Elena clung to the hope that her actions could make a difference. The path was fraught with peril, but she knew it was a path she had to take. The cost of silence was too great, and the consequences of failure too dire. As she prepared for what lay ahead, she took solace in the knowledge that she was not alone. Together they would fight for the truth, no matter the cost. Elena's resolve hardened as she considered the magnitude of the task ahead. Each step she took felt like treading on thin ice, with the weight of secrecy threatening to engulf her. The dimly lit corridors of the laboratory in Moscow were lined with doors leading to rooms filled with machines that hummed ominously, their purpose known only to a select few. It was here that the KGB's most clandestine operations took place, hidden from the prying eyes of the outside world. As Elena navigated the labyrinthine facility, she recalled the whispered conversations she'd overheard between the scientists. Words like resonance frequencies, cognitive disruption, and behavioral manipulation echoed in her mind, painting a chilling picture of the experiments being conducted. These were not just theories or idle threats, they were real, and their implications were terrifying. The thought of innocent lives being manipulated from afar by unseen forces propelled her forward, even as fear clawed at her insides. Her mission was clear: gather evidence of these psychotronic experiments and expose them to the world. But how? The KGB's reach was vast, and its agents were always watching. Every shadow seemed to conceal an informant, every silence a trap. Yet, amid this oppressive atmosphere, Elena found solidarity in unexpected places. Sergei, a fellow scientist disillusioned by what he had seen, had quietly joined her cause. His knowledge of the inner workings of the experiments was invaluable, and his presence a reminder that she was not fighting alone. One evening, as the cold wind howled outside, Elena and Sergei met in a secluded corner of the facility. Their whispered exchange was punctuated by the distant rumble of thunder, a fitting backdrop to the storm brewing within these walls. Quote, Sergei cautioned, his eyes darting nervously. Quote, 9. Elena nodded, her expression steely. Quote, 10. Sergei hesitated, glancing around as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. Quote, 11. He whispered. Quote, 12. A sudden noise cut him off, a clang of metal from somewhere nearby. They froze, hearts pounding as the sound echoed through the corridor. It was as if the very walls of the facility were listening, waiting to betray them. Elena held her breath, her mind racing with possibilities. Was it a guard, another scientist, or perhaps just a stray animal that had somehow found its way into the labyrinthine halls? Sergei gestured for her to follow him, his movements swift and silent like a practiced spy. They slipped into an adjacent room, the door closing with a soft click behind them. In the dim light, he leaned close, his voice barely above a whisper. Quote 13. Elena nodded, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of surveillance. The paranoia that had been simmering beneath the surface now boiled over, making every shadow seem alive with menace. She knew they had to act quickly, but also with the utmost caution. The risk was enormous, yet the moral imperative was greater. As they stood there, the weight of their situation settled heavily upon them. The experiments they had witnessed were more than just breaches of ethics. They were violations of the very essence of human dignity. People were being used as pawns in a game of power and control, their minds manipulated without consent. It was a truth that neither Elena nor Sergei could continue to ignore. Quote 14. Elena finally said, her resolve hardening. Quote 15. Sergei nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. Quote 16. Elena's mind raced through the possibilities. Who could they trust? The very nature of their work meant that betrayal could come from anyone, even those they considered friends. We don't have much time, she reminded him. Every day we wait, more people are at risk. Their plan began to take shape as they whispered in the shadows, a delicate balance of hope and desperation. They would gather the evidence, find a way to smuggle it out, and then expose the truth to the world. It was a daunting task, fraught with danger at every turn, but they knew it was their only option. Meanwhile, back in the main research lab, Dr. Viktor Petrov was growing increasingly suspicious. He had noticed Elena and Sergei's frequent hushed conversations and their tendency to disappear for long stretches. The pressure from his superiors to produce results had already put him on edge, and now he sensed a storm brewing within his own team. Petrov was a man who prided himself on control of his work, his environment, and the people around him. The thought that someone might be undermining his authority was intolerable. He decided to keep a closer watch on them, enlisting the help of a loyal assistant to track their movements. As the days passed, tensions within the facility reached a fever pitch. The air was thick with suspicion, every glance and whisper carrying the potential for disaster. Elena and Sergei knew they were walking a tightrope, one misstep away from disaster. But their resolve was unshakable. They had seen too much, understood too deeply the implications of what was happening around them. And so, under the cover of darkness, they began their mission. Stealing through the corridors of the facility, they made their way to the storage room in the East Wing. The door was heavy, reinforced, a testament to the importance of what lay beyond it. Sergei produced a key card, swiped it through the reader, and the lock clicked open. Inside, rows of tapes and data reels lined the shelves, each labeled with cryptic codes. Elena's heart raced as they quickly scanned for the ones they needed. The records of the frequency tests, the data that could prove the sinister nature of their experiments. Their hands moved swiftly, copying files, hiding the evidence within their clothing. Each second felt like an eternity, the ticking of the clock echoing in their ears. They knew they were running out of time. Any moment, someone could walk in, and all their efforts would be for naught. Finally, with their task complete, they slipped back into the shadows, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. They had done it. They had the evidence. Now, all they needed was a way to get it out and into the hands of someone who could make a difference. But as they made their way through the facility, their luck ran out. The sound of footsteps approached, the beam of a flashlight slicing through the darkness. They ducked into an alcove, holding their breath as a guard passed by, oblivious to their presence. Once the coast was clear, they continued their escape, their minds racing with the enormity of what they were attempting. They had crossed a line, stepping into a world of espionage and danger where the stakes were nothing less than life and death. As they emerged into the night air, the weight of what they had done settled over them. They were now fugitives, hunted by a powerful organization that would stop at nothing to maintain its secrets. But even as fear gnawed at them, a spark of hope flickered in their hearts. They had taken the first step towards exposing the truth, and they would not stop until their mission was complete. They knew the road ahead would be perilous, filled with challenges they could not yet imagine. But they also knew they were not alone. Somewhere out there were others who would stand with them, who would help them shine a light into the darkest corners of the KGB's secret experiments. And with that thought, they set their sights on the path ahead, determined to see their mission through to the very end. As they delved deeper into the labyrinthine world of clandestine operations, the team found themselves piecing together a puzzle that stretched far beyond the confines of Moscow and Leningrad. Each document they uncovered, each faded photograph and cryptic note seemed to whisper tales of a shadowy realm where the boundaries of science and morality blurred into obscurity. One night, as they gathered around a dimly lit table in a safe house hidden within the chaotic sprawl of the city, Natasha, the group's most skilled cryptographer, looked up from her laptop with a glint of revelation in her eyes. "I've found something," she announced, her voice cutting through the tense silence. A reference to a facility in Siberia, an extension of the experiments, perhaps even more advanced. The room buzzed with a mix of excitement and dread. Yuri, a former KGB operative who had defected years ago, leaned forward, his expression grave. "Siberia," he murmured, almost to himself. "That fits. They would need isolation, a place where no one would hear the screams." Anna, the group's pragmatic leader, nodded decisively. "Quote 23, she said. Quote 24. The decision made, the team sprang into action, each member falling into their roles with the precision of a well-rehearsed orchestra. Tickets were procured, disguises meticulously planned, and communication channels established with allies scattered across the globe. As they boarded the train that would carry them across the vast, frozen expanse of Russia, the weight of their mission settled over them like the heavy snow outside. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels echoed their racing thoughts, weaving a tapestry of anticipation and resolve. Days later, they arrived at the edge of civilization, where the air was sharp and biting, and the silence so profound it seemed to swallow their every whisper. Elena and Viktor stepped off the train, their eyes scanning the desolate landscape of Leningrad. The city, with its grandeur and shadows, loomed ahead, a labyrinth of secrets where answers to the mysteries of the psychotronic experiments awaited them. They were met by Alexei, a former operative turned ally who had been quietly gathering intelligence from within the city. His once youthful features were now etched with lines of caution and experience, a testament to the years spent evading the watchful eyes of those who would prefer his silence. He led them through the icy streets, past the austere facades of buildings that hid stories of ambition and betrayal. Their destination was a nondescript apartment in the heart of the city, a safe house that Alexei assured was secure. It was sparsely furnished, with faded wallpaper that peeled at the corners, but it provided the privacy they so desperately needed. As they settled in, Alexei shared what he had uncovered, a network of individuals, from scientists to bureaucrats, who had grown disillusioned with the direction of the experiments. They were willing to talk, to share what they knew in exchange for promises of protection and anonymity. Elena listened intently, her mind cataloguing each name, each connection. She and Victor would need to tread carefully, balancing their desire for truth with the danger of exposure. The stakes were high, and the consequences of failure unthinkable. The first meeting was arranged in a dimly lit cafe, a place where whispers could easily be mistaken for the rustle of newspapers and the clink of coffee cups. The contact, a weary-eyed scientist named Dmitri, arrived late, his nervous glances betraying the fear that had become a constant companion. He spoke quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, detailing the advancements being made in the laboratories, advancements that chilled Elena to the core. Dmitri described the latest developments in mind control, techniques that went beyond mere suggestion and into the realm of total domination. The electromagnetic waves, he explained, were being fine-tuned to target specific neural pathways, allowing for precise manipulation of thoughts and behaviors. The implications were staggering, and the ethical boundaries long since abandoned. As Dmitri spoke, Elena felt a surge of determination. This knowledge, this power, was too dangerous to remain in the hands of those who lacked the moral compass to wield it responsibly. She and Victor had to find a way to stop it, to expose the truth before it was too late. The next few days were a blur of clandestine meetings and hurried notes. Each interaction brought new revelations, and with them, new risks. They learned of a facility hidden beneath the city, a place where the most advanced and dangerous experiments were conducted. It was here, they were told, that the true extent of the Psychotronic project's capabilities was being realized. The challenge now was access. The facility was heavily guarded, its existence known only to a select few. But Elena and Victor knew they had to see it for themselves, to gather evidence that could dismantle the operation once and for all. They planned meticulously, leveraging every contact, every sliver of information to forge a path inside. Finally, the night of the operation arrived. Alexei provided them with forged credentials, and Dmitri, risking everything, offered to guide them through the labyrinthine corridors. As they approached the entrance, Elena's heart pounded in her chest, a rhythm of fear and resolve. The air was thick with tension, each footstep echoing ominously in the dimly lit passageways. Inside, the facility was a stark contrast to the world above. Clinical and cold, it hummed with the energy of machines and the quiet intensity of focused minds. They moved quickly, avoiding the gaze of the guards, their eyes scanning for any signs of the experiments they had heard so much about. It wasn't long before they found what they were looking for: a series of rooms, each more disturbing than the last, where subjects were monitored, their brainwaves displayed in real time on screens. The sight was both fascinating and horrifying, a testament to the power and peril of the technology at hand. As they documented everything they could, Eleanor knew they were running out of time. The longer they stayed, the greater the risk of discovery. Yet the thought of leaving any stone unturned, any piece of evidence uncollected, was unbearable. They pressed on, driven by the knowledge that the fate of countless lives could hinge on their success. But even as they worked, a sense of foreboding loomed. Somewhere in the depths of the facility, a silent alarm had been triggered, and the clock was now ticking faster than ever before. In the dim glow of the laboratory, the air was thick with tension. Eleanor and her team moved with swift precision, cataloging documents, photographing equipment, and downloading data onto portable drives. Each file they opened revealed more about the sinister scope of the experiments. Trials that delved into the darkest recesses of human cognition, manipulating thoughts and emotions with invisible tendrils of electromagnetic waves. "Elena," whispered Dmitri, his voice barely audible over the hum of machinery, "I found something." He held up a folder, its cover marked with the insignia of the KGB and stamped "Top Secret." Elena glanced at the contents, her eyes widening at the implications. Inside were detailed notes on test subjects, ordinary citizens plucked from their lives, unaware of the fate that awaited them. Their experiences were recorded with clinical detachment. Shifts in mood, changes in behavior, the eerie sensation of voices in their minds. "This can't be allowed to continue," Elena muttered, her resolve hardening. "We have to get this out to the world." Just then, a distant clatter echoed through the corridors, a reminder of the precariousness of their mission. The facility was awakening, its guardians alerted to the intrusion. Eleanor's heart pounded in her chest as she motioned for the team to gather. They navigated the labyrinthine passages, the shadows seeming to stretch and twist like living entities. Every corner held the potential for discovery, every step a gamble against capture. The facility was a warren of secrets, but they had no choice but to forge ahead, driven by the weight of their discovery. As they neared the exit, the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. Eleanor signaled the team to hide, ducking into an alcove just as a pair of guards rounded the corner, their conversations a tense murmur. Eleanor held her breath, willing herself to become invisible, every muscle taut with fear. The guards paused, their eyes scanning the corridor. But then, with a barked command from a radio, they moved on, urgency driving their steps. When the way was clear, Eleanor and her team resumed their flight. The cold night air hit them like a shock as they burst through the exit, their escape route winding through the dense woods surrounding the facility. Behind them, alarms blared, the fortress stirring to life in their wake. They pressed onward, adrenaline fueling their frantic pace. As they reached the rendezvous point, a nondescript van hidden beneath a canopy of trees, Eleanor allowed herself a moment to breathe. They piled into the vehicle, the engine roaring to life as they sped away from the complex, leaving behind the weight of its oppressive secrets. In the safety of the van, Eleanor reviewed the data they'd gathered, her mind racing with the possibilities. The world had to know. The truth of these experiments, the audacious reach of the KGB into the realm of the human mind, could not remain hidden. As they raced through the night, a new resolve settled over her. Armored with the knowledge they had risked so much to obtain, Eleanor knew they had to find a way to bring this dark chapter to light. But as the cityscape of Leningrad blurred past, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that their every move was anticipated by an unseen force. Victor, sensing her unease, glanced over. Quote, 38. Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. Quote, 31. As the van wound through the streets, they discussed their options. They had contacts, people who might help them expose the truth, but trust was a rare commodity in their world. They had to be careful about who they approached and how they presented their findings. Quote, 32, Victor suggested. Quote, 30. Elena considered this. Quote, 34. Quote, 35. Quote, 36. Elena agreed. Quote sheet, 37. The van pulled into a secluded alley and Victor cut the engine. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. Elena opened her laptop, the glow from the screen illuminating the small space. She began sifting through the data, highlighting the most damning pieces of evidence. Hours passed as they formulated their plan, the sun beginning to rise over the city. They were exhausted but determined. As they finalized their strategy, Victor looked at Elena with a seriousness that made her stomach churn. He asked softly. Elena met his gaze, her resolve unshaken. Quote 40. Ferch. With their plan set, they ventured out into the bustling streets of Leningrad, each step heavy with the knowledge of what lay ahead. They had to move quickly, find Sergei, and get the information to him before the KGB could close in. The city was alive with activity, people going about their daily lives, unaware of the silent battle being waged beneath the surface. Elena and Victor blended into the crowd, their eyes scanning for signs of surveillance, their hearts pounding with adrenaline. They reached the cafe where Sergei was known to frequent, its exterior unassuming, a relic of a different era. Inside, the air was thick with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft murmur of conversation. It was a refuge of normalcy in a world that seemed anything but. Victor spotted Sergei at a corner table, his weathered face buried in a newspaper. As they approached, Sergei looked up, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. Quote, 41. He greeted, a hint of surprise in his voice. Quote, 42. Victor extended his hand, a sense of urgency in his demeanor. Quote, 43. Sergei's gaze shifted to Elena, assessing her with the practiced eye of a seasoned journalist. And who is this? Elena, Victor introduced. A colleague. We have information, evidence that needs to be made public, but we can't do it alone. Sergei leaned back in his chair, considering their words. What kind of information? Victor hesitated, glancing around the cafe before lowering his voice. Experiments, Sergei. Mind control, electromagnetic waves. The KGB is involved, and it's bigger than anything we've seen before. Sergei's eyes widened, the gravity of Victor's words sinking in. You realize what you're asking. If this is true, if it's as big as you say, we're all in danger. Elena nodded, her voice steady. We know, but we can't stand by and do nothing. People need to know what's happening. Sergei sighed, a flicker of determination crossing his face. All right, let me see what you have. They spent the next hour sharing their findings, Sergei's expression growing more serious with each revelation. He asked questions, probed for details, his mind racing with possibilities. Quote 52, he finally said, leaning forward with newfound resolve. Quote 53. Quote 54. Victor interrupted. Quote 55. Sergei nodded, his mind already working through the logistics. Quote 56. As they left the cafe, a sense of hope mingled with their fear. They had taken the first step, but they knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger. The KGB would not take this lightly, and every move they made would be watched. But for now, they had allies, And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, they clung to the belief that truth, once revealed, could not be silenced. Their fight was just beginning, and together they would face whatever came next. In a dimly lit room in a nondescript building on the outskirts of Leningrad, a group of scientists huddled around a large table cluttered with equipment. Dr. Ivanov, a man whose eyes bore the weight of too many secrets, leaned over a set of blueprints. He whispered, "Dr. Petrova," his colleague with a resolute demeanor nodded. Quote, 59. Ivanov sighed deeply. Quote, 60. In another corner of the room, a younger scientist, Sergei, watched them intently. He was new to the project, drawn in by the promise of cutting-edge research, but now he felt trapped in a moral quandary. Quote, 61. Petrova glanced at Ivanov, then back at Sergei. Quote, 62. Sergei's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his glasses. And what about the test subjects? Do they even know what's being done to them? Ivanov's face hardened. Quote, 64. As the conversation continued, a sense of unease pervaded the room. These were brilliant minds, capable of unlocking the mysteries of the universe, yet here they were, bound by the chains of secrecy and fear. Meanwhile, back in Moscow, Anna and Dmitri were strategizing their next move. Quote, 65. Anna said, her voice steady but urgent. Quote, 66. Dmitri rubbed his temples, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Quote, 67. Anna nodded, determination etched in her features. Quote, 68. As the train continued its journey, Elena and Viktor listened intently, the gravity of their mission settling in. The stakes were incredibly high. They were not just fighting against an institution, but against a powerful ideology that had shaped their lives and the lives of millions. The potential for retaliation was enormous, yet the moral imperative to act was even greater. Arriving in Leningrad felt like stepping into another world. The city, cloaked in winter's chill, seemed to breathe with secrets. Its historic streets were lined with whispers of the past, stories untold, and the weight of what they were about to uncover. They were strangers in a city that was both familiar and foreign, a place that held both hope and danger. Dmitri's contact was a man named Sergei, a former KGB operative who had grown disillusioned with the regime. He had seen too much, done too much, and the memories haunted him. Sergei was cautious, meeting them only in the most secluded parts of the city, away from prying eyes and listening ears. His knowledge was invaluable, but his trust had to be earned. In a dimly lit cafe, hidden away from the bustling streets, Sergei sat across from them, his eyes sharp and wary. "What you're asking for is dangerous," he began, his voice low but steady. "These documents are guarded, kept under the strictest security. If you're caught, it won't just be you who suffers. You need to be sure this is what you want." Elena leaned forward, her voice filled with quiet resolve. "We've seen what happens to those who are unaware, who are manipulated without consent. We have to stop it. People deserve to know the truth." Sergei studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded. "I can help you, but it will take time. There are people I need to contact, arrangements to be made. Until then, you need to stay low. The city has eyes, and not all of them are friendly." With that, their path was set. The days that followed were tense, filled with a sense of urgency and caution. They moved through the city like shadows, careful to blend in, to not draw attention. Each day brought them closer to the truth, but also closer to the danger that lurked just beyond their sight. Viktor spent his days poring over maps of the city, identifying potential safe houses and escape routes. His background in engineering gave him a knack for seeing patterns, for understanding the flow of the city and how to navigate it unseen. Elena, meanwhile, focused on gathering as much information as she could, speaking in hushed tones with anyone who might have overheard. Something. Seen something. Despite the constant tension, there were moments of camaraderie, of shared laughter that lightened the burden they carried. In those quiet moments, they allowed themselves to dream of a future where the truth was known, where people could live without fear of their own minds turning against them. Finally, the day came when Sergei contacted them. The documents were ready, hidden in an abandoned building on the outskirts of the city. It was a location chosen for its isolation, far from the prying eyes of the KGB. The plan was simple, yet fraught with risks. Retrieve the documents and get them to a safe location where they could be copied and distributed to the world. The night was cold as they approached the building, their breath visible in the icy air. Sergei had assured them that the area would be clear, but there was always the possibility of surveillance. Every sense was heightened, every sound amplified in the stillness of the night. Inside, the building was dark and silent, the only light coming from their flashlights. As they moved through the empty halls, the weight of their mission pressed down on them. But there was also a sense of hope, of purpose. They were so close now, closer than they had ever dared to hope. In a small, windowless room, they found the documents, carefully wrapped and hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Elena's hands trembled as she retrieved them, a mix of fear and anticipation coursing through her. This was it. The evidence they needed to expose the truth, to finally bring the reality of the psychotronic experiments to light. But as they turned to leave, a noise echoed through the building, the sound of footsteps approaching. Their hearts raced as they realized they were not alone. The shadows were closing in, and with them, the specter of everything they had fought so hard against. It was a reminder of the danger they faced, the precariousness of their situation. Yet even in that moment of fear, there was a spark of defiance, a refusal to be cowed by the forces that sought to control them. They had come too far, risked too much to be stopped now. As the footsteps drew nearer, they prepared to face whatever lay ahead, determined to protect the truth they had uncovered, no matter the cost. The footsteps stopped just short of the dimly lit corridor where they had taken refuge. The air was thick with tension, and every second felt like an eternity. A voice echoed, low and commanding, but with an edge of uncertainty, as if the speaker was unsure of what they might find. Quote 73 called the voice, reverberating off the cold walls and sending a chill down their spines. The question hung in the air, unanswered as they exchanged a glance, silently weighing their options. Anna, ever the strategist, gestured to Pavel to stay put. She took a cautious step forward into the light, her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. Quote 74, she called back, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. The shadowy figure at the other end of the hall paused, as if taken aback by her boldness. Quote 75, the figure asked, stepping forward to reveal a man in an officer's uniform, his expression a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Anna took a deep breath, drawing on every ounce of courage. Quote 76, she replied, using the alias they had agreed upon. Quote 77. She hoped her words would buy them time, a sliver of doubt to stall any immediate action. The man studied her, his eyes narrowing. Quote 78. His skepticism was palpable, yet there was a flicker of intrigue in his gaze. Behind Anna, Pavel shifted slightly, ready to intervene if necessary. He knew they couldn't afford to be discovered, not when they were so close to uncovering the full extent of the KGB's experiments. The officer seemed to mull over Anna's words, as if weighing their authenticity against his orders. Quote 79, he said finally, his tone grudging. Quote 8 key? Anna nodded, a wave of relief washing over her. Quote 81, she agreed, mustering a polite smile. Quote, 82. The officer gave a curt nod before turning on his heel, his footsteps echoing once more as he retreated down the corridor. As soon as he was out of earshot, Pavel exhaled the breath he'd been holding, stepping out to join Anna. Quote, 83, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Quote, 84. Anna nodded, her mind already racing ahead. Quote, 85, she said, urgency threading her words. Quote, 86. Pavel agreed, and together they slipped back into the shadows, their path illuminated only by the dim emergency lights. The stakes had never been higher, and the walls seemed to close in around them as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the facility. Every door they passed seemed to hold secrets of its own, whispering echoes of the past that clung to the air like a suffocating fog. Each step they took felt like a step deeper into the heart of a beast that thrived on control and manipulation, a beast they were determined to slay. As they reached the end of the corridor, a heavy door loomed before them, marked with a symbol that made their hearts race, a symbol they had seen before in the files detailing the experiments. It was the emblem of the division responsible for the psychotronic weapon development, a stark reminder of the power held by those within. Pavel glanced at Anna, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. He whispered, his voice barely audible above the pounding of his heart. Anna nodded, her hand steady as she reached for the door handle. The metal felt cold against her skin, a chilling reminder of the reality they faced. With a deep breath, she turned the handle, and the door swung open to reveal a dimly lit room filled with rows of equipment and papers strewn across tables. They moved quickly, aware that time was not on their side. Anna's eyes scanned the room, searching for anything that might provide the evidence they needed to expose the horrifying truth. Her gaze fell on a series of documents, each stamped with the seal of the KGB, detailing the experiments and their effects in precise clinical language. It was all there, the manipulation, the lies, the hidden agendas. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor. Panic surged through them as they realized their window of opportunity was closing. Pavel grabbed the documents, shoving them into his bag while Anna searched for anything else of value. Her fingers brushed against a small, unassuming tape recorder, and she slipped it into her pocket, just as the footsteps grew louder. With no time to spare, they ducked behind a row of equipment, holding their breath as a shadow passed by the door. The figure hesitated, and for a moment Anna feared they had been discovered. But then the shadow moved on, the footsteps receding into the distance. Pavel exhaled slowly, relief mingling with the adrenaline that coursed through his veins. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice a strained whisper. Anna nodded, her mind racing. "Through the back," she suggested, pointing to a narrow passageway that led away from the main corridor. It was a gamble, but they had no choice. They moved swiftly, the documents clutched tightly in Pavel's bag, their path illuminated by the dim emergency lights. Every shadow seemed to reach for them, every creak of the old building a reminder of the danger they faced. But as they emerged into the cool night air, a sense of determination filled them. The streets of Leningrad lay before them, a labyrinth of secrets and shadows. But now, armed with the truth, they had the power to bring it all to light. The files in Pavel's bag were more than just papers. They were a weapon, a tool to dismantle the very foundation of the experiments that had caused so much pain. As they vanished into the night, Anna's mind raced with possibilities. They would need to be smart, to find the right people to trust, to ensure that the truth reached those who could make a difference. It wouldn't be easy, but they were ready for the fight. And somewhere, deep within the heart of the city, Elena and Viktor were making their own moves, allies in a war they had never expected to fight. Together, They would shine a light on the darkness, exposing the secrets that had festered for too long. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with danger and challenges. But as the city slept, unaware of the storm that was about to break, Anna and Pavel knew that they were ready to face whatever came next, ready to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves, ready to bring an end to the experiments that had haunted so many lives. And so, with the dawn of a new day, they took their first steps towards justice, knowing that the road would be long and arduous, but determined to see it through to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. Comment what you want to hear next. Anna and Pavel's journey began under the cover of darkness, their footsteps silent against the cobblestone streets of Leningrad. They moved with purpose, each carrying the weight of a mission that had grown far beyond their initial understanding. The air was crisp, biting at their faces as they made their way towards an unmarked building nestled between two towering structures. Its facade, as nondescript as its purpose, was sinister. Inside, the laboratory buzzed with the sterile hum of fluorescent lights and the faint, unsettling crackle of electromagnetic equipment. Scientists in white coats moved about like ghosts, their expressions blank, eyes hidden behind thick glasses that reflected the glow of computer screens. This was the heart of the operation, where minds were bent and wills were broken, all in the name of power. Anna and Pavel had spent months gathering intelligence, piecing together rumors and whispers from the shadows of Moscow and Leningrad. The KGB's psychotronic experiments were shrouded in secrecy, hidden beneath layers of red tape and misinformation. Yet, with every step, their resolve had only grown stronger. They had seen the impact of these experiments firsthand. Families torn apart, individuals left hollow and unrecognizable, their identities erased by forces they could neither see nor understand. As they approached the entrance, Pavel nodded to Anna, signaling that it was time. She took a deep breath, steadying herself for what lay ahead. Their plan was simple, but fraught with danger. They would infiltrate the facility, gather evidence, and expose the truth to the world. It was their only chance to bring the horrors to light and, hopefully, put an end to them once and for all. Inside, the corridors twisted like a labyrinth, each turn a potential trap. They moved swiftly, bypassing security with forged credentials and the occasional feigned nonchalance. Anna led the way, her keen eyes scanning for any sign of their target, a high-ranking official known only as, quote, 90, quote, rumored to be the mastermind behind the experiments. The architect was a phantom, a name whispered in hushed tones among the scientists, feared and revered in equal measure. It was said that his knowledge of electromagnetic manipulation was unparalleled, his methods ruthless. Capturing his plans would be the key to dismantling the program, but confronting him meant facing the full force of the KGB's wrath. As they neared the control room, a sudden noise made them freeze. Voices echoed from behind a nearby door, growing louder as they approached. Anna and Pavel exchanged a glance, tension crackling between them like static. There was no turning back now. Pavel leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is it, Anna. We have to be quick, in and out, before anyone knows we're here." Anna nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, the knowledge that failure was not an option. With a deep breath, she pushed open the door. Inside, the room was dimly lit, filled with monitors displaying streams of data and images of test subjects. At the center stood the architect,